For an outlook on what United States policy might be on Africa and other parts of the world like China under Biden and Harris's administration, we're now joined by Professor David Monyae, who's the Director for the Center for Africa and China Studies at the University of Johannesburg. Thanks so much indeed for joining us. Always good to talk to you. There's still quite a bit to go in terms of voting and campaigning, but does it look like Joe Biden and Kamala Harris may get over the line this time?
Indeed. I think they have put in a very strong ticket, bringing in quite a number of constituencies. And so far, the narrative, the case that they put against Donald Trump is quite strong. If they maintain the momentum, I think chances are very high for them to win. But the U.S. elections are always tricky, given that the college system, that they might get majority votes in terms of numbers, but then when it comes to states, Donald Trump might still win. So at the moment, it's really hard to tell.
So a lot of work on his in-tray if he does become president, and I would imagine that initially he'll be focused on domestic issues, COVID-19, for example, the economy and jobs. But Donald Trump has really wreaked havoc, some would say, in terms of foreign policy, and that's where a lot of work will be required. Where will he start, do you think?
I think the starting point is going to be stabilizing the relationship with strategic partners, particularly the European countries, the European Union, and all Western countries in terms of dealing with issues, moving away from your America first, moving from your unilateralism into multilateralism, moving with others on key issues, and paying more attention on issues such as climate change, also moving in on strengthening the United Nations and dealing with issues of peace and security, and as well as dealing with China. I don't think under his administration he'll be going alone in dealing with China. I think he will unite the Western countries, have a united front in dealing with issues pertaining to China.
Well, let's talk about China, because Africa has a vested interest in terms of how America and China deal with each other. So during the primaries, he referred to China as, in fact, he called President Xi Jinping as a thug. So he was quite tough in terms of talking about China and the president. As president, he'll probably step back a little bit from that. And what will that mean in terms of developing a relationship with China?
I think what he's going to do is that to find core areas where Washington and Beijing will converge. And then chances are quite high that on issues of climate change, I think they will move in tandem, as well as on issues of Iran, maintaining the deal, where one would see United States coming back into the fold, into the agreement alongside China, Russia, and European countries. And he will also move on quite a number of other key UN agencies, particularly the World Health Organization, as he'll be dealing with the pandemic at home. And that's where Africa kicks in. It will be quite critical for Africa to see stability in the United States and the well-being of the elections in the United States, for order in the global system, for Africa's own chance to develop.
Donald Trump is going to say that Joe Biden is soft on China, but the reality is this relationship hasn't served China or America with this trade war that seems to have been escalating over time. How do you come back from that?
I think the issue of trade is quite critical for Democrats. I think even President Donald Trump is quite aware that this is a short term in terms of applying tariffs on China. It's the American economy is quite suffering. I think you'll see the incoming administration, if Biden wins, changing gear completely when it comes on issues of trade. I think he will try to make peace with China on key issues of trade, as well as within WTO, have a global agreement in terms of ways of trading. And therefore, I think there will be a stability. However, there will be tension in other areas, areas that one is expecting to see high tension between Washington and Beijing. It will be around Hong Kong, the ongoing Hong Kong issues at the moment, around Taiwan, as well as the South China Sea. You're going to see an increased United States shifting from Middle East into Asia and targeting China in particular.
All right, so we had started talking about Africa's position in terms of this relationship between between the US and China. And we have seen that China sometimes can force you to pick a side, particularly over certain issues, Taiwan being one of them. And I just wonder what it might mean for our continent. Will Joe Biden, Kamala Harris have a better policy towards Africa directly if we take China out of the equation? I mean, Donald Trump, not sure that he could name 6, 7 countries on the continent if he tried.
Indeed, but when you look at Biden, I think he has a vast experience. This is a man that served within the US Congress, particularly on Foreign Relation Committee. And he has a vast experience as a vice president under President Obama. He has handled the African continent for a much longer period, including during the apartheid. He had somehow progressive position on anti-apartheid, and therefore driven by a strong black caucus within the United States. You might see some movements on the continent here and there, but on the whole, you're going to see more or less a continuity of what we have through the AGOA mechanisms, more trade. But we should also expect less insult as Africans. I mean, Donald Trump, outright racist, and under this new administration, one would expect much more a sober relation between the continent and the United States.
Might we see Kamala Harris perhaps with issues of the continent on her desk, given her ethnicities?
We shouldn't expect much from her. We have experience of President Obama himself with a much more wider African direct link. The U.S. Foreign policy is not influenced by one's heritage or anything else. However, if she becomes the first female vice president, I think you're going to see changes on a number of other issues. Issues of gender globally, I think in conflict zones and other areas where one will expect a much more progressive gender-sensitive policies. And therefore, in that light, we might see much more progressive policies coming from Washington.
All right. You've written an article recently about this issue, and one of the things that you said is for Africa to achieve Agenda 2063, Africa will need support from US and China. Will we be able to be friends with both, or at some point might we be forced to choose a partner?
We have no choice other than to follow the two superpowers. We cannot survive, we cannot stabilize and really achieve Agenda 2063 vision without the support. Already the African Union has entered into partnership with the United States and China. And therefore, I think we need to maintain a clear position that neither Washington nor Beijing, I think we are pro the African continent. Whoever brings business to the African continent will be our greatest partner, should it be China or United States in this instance.
Joe Biden was very vocal in terms of fighting apartheid and telling the apartheid story in the United States. Might we see a visit from Joe Biden at some point to South Africa?
We might not be the very first country you visit, more likely to be Europe, but I think with time, we might have a better chance compared to the Trump administration, who's only the first lady that has entered the African continent, dressed in a much more typical white settler, dressing into safaris. And I think the new administration might have a much more better, smarter policy and dealing with issues of health, dealing with issues of peace and security on the African continent, and more trade. And where possible, you might also see United States reaching out to China to have a common position on major African issues.
So overall, are you saying that as Africans we should be optimistic if Kamala Harris, Joe Biden win the election in November?
We should be, compared to what we have. But I think the core issue at the moment is to follow the elections with a much more concern that either the election could be rigged and or could be a situation where there's an even much worse situation at the heart of developed country, United States itself, in terms of the outcome of these particular elections, given internal issues that are taking place, which are worrying to all peace and loving people in the world.
Professor David Monyae, we're going to have to leave it there. Thank you very, very much indeed for joining us, and your insights always invaluable and greatly appreciated. Thank you so much.
Most welcome.
All right, that was David Monyae, who's the Director for Center for Africa-China Studies at the University of Johannesburg, giving us his take on what a Biden-Harris ticket might look like for Africa going forward if they win the election in November.